This week on Focus Asia, the right to rule. Will fresh elections in Kashmir help unify a divided land? Looking for perfect parents. How a new scheme is giving hope to China's abandoned children. And out of the shadows, why it's suddenly cool to be Korean.
Hello and welcome to Focus Asia. From our studios in Hong Kong, I'm Joe Kainz. We begin tonight in the Himalayas and the troubled and divided state of Kashmir. The first round of state elections took place this week in Indian-controlled Kashmir, and there are more scheduled. Previous polls have been marred by bloodshed and accusations of vote rigging, and this one has been a little different. More than 300 people have been killed in pre-election violence. Moderate separatists are boycotting the polls. As a result, India's hope of using the vote to endorse its rule in the region appears in tatters. Rob McBride reports from Srinagar.
This has always been billed as the election held in the shadow of the gun, and so far it's lived up to expectations. In one of the most militarized places on Earth, and in a territory bitterly disputed by two nuclear neighbors, attempting to hold a ballot which allows the people to choose their local representatives, and trying to ensure it's free and fair. In the more than 50 years of turmoil and bloodshed over Kashmir, elections here have, by tradition, been neither free nor fair.
It has a very bad history. Means you can't single out one election that, yes, this was free and fair election. For several years, the elections were being held and there were no elections in fact. These nomination papers of all opposition people were just being rejected by electoral officers, and all the seats would go uncontested. Means it's a history. It's because New Delhi always wanted its own favorite people in the chair.
In the capital, Srinagar, the sometimes beleaguered Indian flag has been joined by many others. This is a city in election mode, but you soon realize it's an election with a difference. Boycotted by the main parties demanding independence for Kashmir, and the prime target of gun and grenade attacks by militant separatists, the political arena is not for the faint-hearted. Political activists promoting their candidates while keeping their own identities secret for fear of reprisal. And around Kashmir, election officers, many recruited from other parts of India, brought to assembly points to be kitted out with the essentials needed to run a polling station here: an electronic balloting machine and body armor. Shahzad Alam, a school teacher in real life, told us there wasn't any danger. The helmet and bulletproof vest, just one of those necessary precautions. They are precautions they're well advised to take. In the run-up to these elections, there's been a spate of political assassinations, including a minister from the state government. And that's on top of what's considered the usual toll of life taken by this running sore of a conflict. In the Mysuma district of Srinagar, no one's talking about elections or candidates on this morning. Two young men have been killed in an encounter with security forces the previous evening. They were singled out and shot in cold blood, the residents tell us. The military deny that, but in the atmosphere of hate which pervades so many neighborhoods here, allegations of atrocities by the security forces are readily believed. The funeral becomes a protest. That protest soon finds an obvious target as election bunting is ripped down and destroyed. These are people who will not be exercising their franchise anytime soon. In this already highly charged environment, an election which has led to more violence and political killings, Kashmir has paid a high price for this ballot and doesn't yet know if it's all been worth it. In the farming communities around Srinagar, independent candidate Mohammed Ashraf Bakshi is on the campaign trail. With the main opposition parties boycotting this election, the independents have become an important rallying point for those demanding change. With their ever-present security men in attendance, they've been finding crowds who want to listen to what they have to say and sometimes want to talk back. In the village of Achun, their burning issue is drainage and who's going to fix it. For these elections may be at the center of world attention, but they're also about ordinary people and the ordinary things that concern them. I'm going to vote for whoever gives us a drain, Shamimar told us. I've got a vote and I'm going to use it. And there is the dilemma for Kashmiris. Work within the present system and push for limited change, or boycott the ballot in pursuit of the wider ideal of autonomy, but in doing so, allow the present leadership to stay in power.
I'm from this area and I'm going to fight for the people of this area. We are just out of the city of Srinagar, yet there have been no development by the National Conference.
Assembling for an election rally, the National Conference, the party which rules in Indian-controlled Kashmir and despised by many for what they see as being the instrument of Indian rule.
There has always been an element of a population that has believed that the grass is greener on the other side. But the same way the founder of the National Conference had decided that really Jammu and Kashmir's future is best suited to go along with India rather than Muslim Pakistan. And this is something we continue to believe even today.
Young and politically savvy, Omar Abdullah, representing the third generation of a dynasty which stretches back to Indian independence. His grandfather, Sheikh Abdullah, was the first chief minister. His father, Farooq Abdullah, is the current holder, a position which Omar is now set to inherit. It's a job that brings with it inherent dangers. Your own father has faced several assassination attempts. Do you ever look at the job and think, why bother?
No, I think if that day ever arose, I probably would leave, because the sole motivating factor is that you get up in the morning and you actually look forward to a good day's work. And fortunately for me so far, I haven't woken up ever in the morning questioning why I'm actually doing all this. As far as this dynastic rule element that gets thrown in once in a while, the simple truth is that within a democratic system, perhaps you can call this dynastic rule, but at the end of the day, it's the people that decide. No matter what my surname is, if the people aren't satisfied with either what I'm projecting now, or should I get 6 years in governance, what I do in these 6 years, they will vote me out, and the family I belong to becomes irrelevant then.
If the first round of voting is any indication, the prospects for the remaining rounds seem mixed. At some polling stations, people were readily coming out and voting freely. In other areas where opposition to the ballot is strongest, people stayed away or were forced away by the mob. At this polling station, just one vote cast. And at others still, the voting's suspiciously well ordered. Male voters marshalled into one line, while in the line for women, there are none. And when dissenters start a scuffle, the ringleader quickly pulled out and dealt with. It's then you realize these aren't exactly the willing throngs the authorities had hoped for. The army have forced us to come here, these men claim, and if we don't vote, we'll get beaten up or worse. Whatever the true extent of the coercion by militants or military, and whatever the eventual outcome of the poll itself, what won't be altered is Kashmir's fate. That is still something at the mercy of far more powerful forces in Delhi and Islamabad, over which these votes will have little or no influence.
Coming up, South Koreans live it up after sweeping reforms. But next, China's unwanted children get a second chance at a home life. They have never had the opportunity to live in a loving home with parents. Many orphans in China are rejected because they are born with a disability. And because of that social stigma, their chances of being adopted are slim. Now a program imported from the West is finding a way around the nation's one-child policy. And it's not just benefiting the kids. Mark New reports from Shanghai.
The pace of Xuan Jiemin's learning was extremely slow at one time. But today, she's a happy, active child. She got a jump start on life thanks to an experiment that is creating wonder across China.
When she first came, she could not keep up with the other students. Now it's the second semester, she has caught up. She has quite a good relationship with the other students. She's happier. We think she's normal.
But Jiemin's biological parents viewed things differently. She was abandoned because she had epilepsy. But today she's getting a second chance. She's one of the pioneers in the city's only foster care program. Jiemin can now attend school like a normal child. And better yet, have someone waiting to take her home.
I still remember what she was like when she first came. She was only 85 centimeters tall. She was very small, in poor health, and unable to speak.
Under the care of a foster family, Jiemin's development has accelerated, and she hasn't had an epileptic seizure in nearly a year. It's been 5 years since foster parents took her in, offering a family life rather than the orphanage, the only home she had ever known. As you enter the Shanghai Children's Home, it immediately becomes apparent how affectionate the children are and how much they need a parent. Daddy is what this boy has just called me. This room is full of the lucky ones. Their chances of adoption are good because their cleft lips and heart conditions were corrected or alleviated through surgery. But the odds are far worse for orphans in the other rooms.
Hello, how are you? How are you? The Shanghai Children's Home is the legal guardian of about 1,000 orphans. More than 90% of them have disabilities.
The statistics reflect a cultural difference. In the West, orphans are usually healthy, given up by parents who simply lack the ability or responsibility to take care of them. In China, it's the children with the difficulties.
Maybe because of the child is very severe, handicapped, or has severe diseases like heart disease or some other diseases, they may find a way desperate. Some of the parents, they may think that the medical bill is so high, they just leave the child in hospital.
Also, consider the role the country's one-child policy may play. If you abandon your unhealthy child, then you may get another chance to have a healthy one. Losing out are children with Down syndrome and even needier children.
In this room, most of the children are with cerebral palsy.
Now, what are their chances of being adopted?
Adopted? Quite few.
What about getting a foster family?
I think most of them also like children with Down syndrome. Most of them can be put into foster families.
The concept of a foster parent is relatively new in China, with such programs in less than 10 mainland cities. But the idea fits right into the system. Foster parents are provided cash for daily living costs and the necessary funding to cover the child's medical and educational expenses. and the parents are carefully screened to ensure they're financially self-sufficient. In Shanghai, the result is a waiting list of more than 800 potential foster parents. That's despite the dose of reality given to those who expressed interest in the program. I must let you know, this receptionist says, the kids we have here are seriously disabled. But for some children, that label may be unfair.
Yeah, we find some of the children, and they are in the borderline, but because of lack of the family life, lack of the attachment with people they really relied on, they may get mentally delayed.
So they'll be labeled as mentally retarded or disabled when maybe they shouldn't be.
Yes.
One of those children on the borderline is Jinye. Her foster parents were first told she had a brain deformity. IQ tests indicated she had mild retardation. But through their care, her foster parents claimed Jinye's most recent IQ test increased by 20 points, putting her into the range considered normal.
The education at the orphanage was quite limited. The kids there did not often come into contact with the outside world. When she was tested, she didn't know anything. For example, the first time I took her home from the orphanage, she had never seen a car. The teacher told me she had never been outside the orphanage gate.
For a child staying at an orphanage, the help from the staff there is much less than support from parents. This is a very important point. If the child is able, he should leave the orphanage to have a healthy family life. It will benefit both his capabilities and mental state.
Ironically, the same one-child policy which may be bringing many children to the orphanage may also be helping to find them new homes. By fostering a child, families are allowed to bypass the strict rules and fulfill their dreams of raising more kids. Mrs. Shren's son has grown up and moved overseas, so caring for a child in need helps ease her loneliness. Foster parenting allows the Jeans to get what they've always wanted. For the last 2 generations on both sides of the family, they've never had a girl.
From the very first day, my love for her surpassed that of even my son. My boy knows this. When my son was her age, I was often away on business. I didn't take care of him so much. After we fostered her, I traveled less. I've given more love and care for her than my own son.
Becoming a better parent the second time around could create sibling rivalry. But that's a risk any family with more than one child faces.
My brother plays with me, but sometimes we fight. Then mother scolds us, but then we are okay again. I think it's very good to have a brother. I can better understand things at school because he teaches me. Even if we argue, I still feel happy.
Life at the orphanage has become a distant memory. But Jinye does still remember some of the close friends she had while she was there. Jinye can only hope that life for them has turned out to be just as beautiful as her own.
Still to come, bucking the trend. South Korea experiences an economic turnaround. Amid Asia's dismally performing economies, South Korea has stood out as one country that's bucked the trend. Koreans have survived the pain of tough economic reforms and are now enjoying the boom times. The icing on the cake came earlier this year when the nation was praised for its part in co-hosting the Soccer World Cup. And as the economy of longtime rival Japan crumbles, Korea has suddenly become the cool place to be. Adrian Brown reports.
A Sunday afternoon in South Korea's capital, Seoul. And a sight that would hearten any store owner. While Asian consumers have been tightening their belts, the South Koreans are on a spending spree. Retail sales increased by 11% in 2001. The image today is of a people richer and freer than at any time in their history. Hard to believe it's the same city that in 1998 sprouted tent cities and soup kitchens. Today, though, this nation of 48 million sees itself as a model for developing nations everywhere. It is in colourful, bustling streets like this one that you sense South Korea is becoming a booming concern. Compare that to 5 years ago when the country was reeling from the effects of Asia's economic crisis. Foreign exchange reserves were disappearing faster than quicksand, and families were being forced to sell off their gold and jewellery as part of a national campaign to save the country from bankruptcy. Now, though, a dramatic transformation. Helping in that transformation, the country's cultural exports. The K-pop phenomenon is sweeping Asia. One particular CD by a 16-year-old diva called Boa has been dominating the charts in Japan, Korea's historic adversary. And K-pop is top of the shopping list for many Japanese tourists who continue to flock here.
I like romantic songs.
And the Korean songs are romantic?
Yeah.
Better than Japanese songs?
Yes, because I like Korea so much.
South Korea is still basking in the glory of having co-hosted one of the most successful World Cup soccer finals ever, and continues to showcase its turnaround.
Highly cosmopolitan city now, certainly more affluent and definitely cleaner and greener.
As neighboring Japan's economy stagnates, South Korea's booms. This is a fiercely proud nation, yet is bouncing back, say analysts, by facing up to past failure and dealing with it.
It's virtually impossible to have slush funds. It's virtually impossible really to take out or make bank loans which are not going to perform.
So there's greater transparency now, would you say?
I think to a large extent, of course, it's not a perfect situation, but a lot more transparency, a lot more rationality in the way corporations are run.
They shut down non-performing institutions. They set an ambitious goal for where they wanted to go. They threw out old sacred cows about allowing foreigners in, a whole pile of stuff in a very short period of time.
But there's still opposition to the reforms that have seen thousands of state sector workers lose their jobs, and the government may yet have to inflict even more pain.
We still have some inflexibility with the labor sector. The state-owned enterprises have not been reformed sufficiently, and even in the corporate sector, there's still sort of family concentration and so on. But it's whether the cup is half full or half empty. I think we have a cup that is a little more than half full.
South Korea built its reputation on heavy industry. Now it has a new vision, to become Asia's premier high-tech hub. That strategy includes transforming the capital into what's called a digital media city. Foreign investors are convinced it'll happen.
Since the beginning of '98 alone, there have been more than 9,000 companies start up, and more than 60% of them are focusing on developing new technologies in media, digitalization, information technology, other types of issues.
It's already one of the world's most wired societies, and the figures are staggering. 25 million internet surfers and almost 30 million mobile phone users, creating a unique market to try out new content services and wireless technologies.
Just an amazing place. Korea is the world leader today in terms of internet usage, internet telecommunication, developing new technologies for telecommunication usage, and the usage here is the highest among any populations in the world.
But the South Korean success story could still be threatened by the unpredictable regime to the north. Border tensions are easing, but half a century on, North and South remain technically at war. There are occasional clashes along the heavily fortified border, with up to 1 million soldiers on a permanent state of alert. So whatever comes of the South's current economic strides, reunification is still a very long way off.
And that's all we have time for on Focus Asia this week. Please email us if you have any comments about the show. Our address, focusasia@startv.com. And don't forget the website if you want to look at our archive of stories from around the region. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Kainz. Goodbye.